So I'm Alice Newton-Rex. I'm VP of Product at WorldRemit. In late 2016, my product team was struggling. We were mired in dependencies. Nobody could deliver anything without treading on somebody else's toes, and nobody had discrete goals, so nobody really felt ownership for the objectives that they were trying to achieve. And I soon realized that the structure which had supported us so well was beginning to hold us back. It was the latest in the number of very many moments in which I realized that we've achieved the next stage of our evolution and we have to adapt to survive and thrive. Now, my favorite analogy for this is that it's like repotting a plant. It's not that there was anything wrong with the old pot that your plant was in. In fact, it was probably exactly where you needed to be. But you'll find that you begin to chafe up against the edges as you grow and get bigger, and it's time to be potted into another plant. And this is how I've been thinking about growing my product team from scratch at WorldRemit over the last 4 years. Now, I wanted to talk to you today drawing on that experience at WorldRemit and also from the experience of advising a number of other startups going on the same journey. And I want to give you a couple of clues to notice when you're probably ready to repot your product team so that you don't leave it as long as I sometimes have done along the way. So let's think about a startup. Typically, product management at the beginning of a startup is done by the founders. They hold the vision for the product, they specify it detail by detail, and certainly if you're a tech company, this makes a lot of sense. The product is the business. It's the most important thing that they can be working on. In fact, it's likely that the founders will make a number of different hires, probably in development, maybe design, sales, customer service, whatever your business is, before they hire their first product manager, because the founders can fulfill this role really quite successfully. But then they'll start hearing things like this, which is the first sign that it's time to repot, and in this case, hire your first product manager. So questions like, how are all these product decisions actually getting made? Or we keep starting stories or tickets that aren't ready from your development team. Now, this indicates that the founders really don't have enough time to be dedicating all of it to the product, and they need to bring in someone. So cue your first product manager, the team of one. I had the pleasure of being this person at WorldRemit when I joined in 2014. So for a tiny bit of context, WorldRemit is an international money transfer company. We send from 50 countries to over 150. We have many millions of customers who use our service through our app and website. And we have a product team of 8 product managers and 5 product designers. But it didn't look anything like that in 2014 when I joined. We just had the one website. We had about 10,000 customers and many fewer countries. So there I was, in this delicate transition period, trying to take over responsibility for the product from the founders and make decisions about what heretofore had been their baby. So my big advice for anyone who finds himself in this situation is establish really early on what are the red lines, the things that you shouldn't be trying to change, and what are the areas where you're free to innovate and change things as you wish. If you work in a regulated industry like mine, so anything like fintech or regtech, typically those red lines will be anything that relates to your compliance obligations, so things around KYC or know your customer process. So you've got to agree that very quickly about, these are the things that I will not make any changes in, even run any tests in without consultation, which will then leave you free to do all of the other stuff. And building that trust at the beginning is the platform that's going to enable you to have the autonomy to do the job that you really need to do. Now, I'm not saying that you should walk away from that stuff forever, but those are the things where you need to understand what are the guardrails. So a team of one is a nice position to be in because you've been giving it your full attention, which means probably the development team will be very grateful for you having arrived. But if the business is going well, you keep hiring, soon you'll start hearing things a little bit like this. So we don't get enough time with you, or the team's too big. These are classic signs that you need to repot your product team again, which means that you need to start adding people and additional product managers. My major piece of advice here is you've really got to be careful not to just hire a product team that looks exactly as you look. I think it's important across any business, but it's especially important in product to hire for diversity. Particularly if you have a product that serves different types of users and indeed users around the world, then having the diversity of perspective that a diverse team brings is going to be absolutely essential. And although it's very tempting and reassuring to hire people who use all the same terminology you do and have exactly the same backgrounds and experiences, you really will find it limits you. The other thing you'll find when you start hiring additional product managers is that you have to make some tricky decisions about splitting the team. So you thought you were just augmenting your resource, but in fact, you now have to start deciding what a good org design and structure looks like. Your first additional product manager will probably mean splitting into at least 2 different teams. So what are you getting them to work on? What we did at WorldRemit, and what I've seen a lot of early startups do, is split into a kind of classic front-end, back-end. Now, I think we all know that this can generate a lot of problems, but when you're a small team and you're really still building your foundational services, it makes a lot of sense. So as a little bit of color on WorldRemit, when I joined, unfortunately for a small company, we already had some legacy tech. In fact, our database was curiously written in Spanish. We are the only company I know who's ever had to hire for DBAs with Spanish preferable. So obviously we were refactoring like hell to try and get rid of our monolith and our Spanish and get into microservices. Meanwhile, on the front end, we were building our first mobile app. So it wouldn't have made any sense to divide our few mobile developers among teams looking at, say, different stages of the customer journey, because they were still building that real foundation of the product. However, as we grew teams, we started adding new component teams much on the same model, and very quickly began to hear some complaints like this. So we can't get that piece of work done without talking to these other 10 teams. What does success even look like for our team? Nothing gets shipped on time, and our priorities keep shifting. These are the signs that you need to start thinking about a different team structure, and I would suggest repotting as soon as possible from a tech maturity perspective into mission teams. So what does this look like? Well, it's the classic cross-functional team with the product manager, front-end, back-end developers, data scientists, designers, whatever the other skills are that you need to be able to deliver against the objectives. And those objectives, having clear missions and KPIs, are absolutely essential. So when you have a clear mission and you know how you're going to measure it, it frees up the team from a focus on delivering particular projects and worrying about the date that it's going to be shipped, more to looking at what the outcomes are and to engaging the creativity of the whole team about how can we solve this problem, how can we get better at what it is that we're doing today. And lastly, they should have the end-to-end delivery. So this means that you're not stuck in that world of dependencies that I was talking about before, where you practically need a PhD in project management to be able to ship any single feature because it bounces around between the teams. But in actual fact, a single autonomous team can achieve the end-to-end delivery of any feature that they need to take on to meet their mission. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, I've got this well-structured autonomous team. Everyone's feeling really empowered and engaged because they know what their missions are. What else could we possibly need to do? You might start hearing things like this. So what's everyone actually working on then? Well, that should have been approved by another department, but we've already built a service that does that. These are the classic signs that it's time to repot again because you have an alignment problem. So I do subscribe to the management theory that says success exists on the edge of chaos. I absolutely never like the idea of introducing more structure than is necessary to be able to keep your company moving in the same direction, which means that when I was worrying about the alignment problem, I wanted to do something very light touch. And what we introduced at WorldRemit was the value case process, is what we call it. It's loosely adapted from Roman Pichler's product value canvas, so I recommend you check that out if you have time. And what it means is that every month when a product manager with their team is planning a new big initiative, they'll bring it to a group of their other product manager peers and a senior stakeholder from every department, and they will talk through for each idea, what is the target market that we're aiming at with this initiative? What are the user needs that we think it's going to meet? At this stage, what do we think a product overview would be, and what are the iterations or hypotheses we need to test to get there? What are competitors doing in this space? Or what are the alternatives that we could have considered for meeting this problem a different way? What's the revenue it could bring the company? What's the cost? What are the risks and how do we mitigate them? And who are the stakeholders? So it should be really quick for a product manager to bring this together, but it does ensure that they've definitely thought about everything before they commit to any big idea. And it gives a chance for their peers and other stakeholders to challenge them on what they're doing. And this really helps you harden ideas. So I do completely believe that the unit of delivery is the team, and that product managers should be working closely with their team, but they should also be in an environment where they can find their peers helping harden their ideas and make them stronger. So that's what we worked on for alignment. Okay, so you're all pulling in the same direction, but everyone's autonomous and they're empowered and they're working on their own things and moving quickly. The speed to market's great. Surely now we've worked out what the right structure for a product team is. Then you might start hearing things like this. We're not really trying anything new. Why aren't we testing X technology? And if you work in fintech like I do, then you will know that X is always some variant of blockchain. Our competitors keep launching new products, and the implication is that we're not moving quickly enough. So this is my most recent challenge and the most recent repotting of the product team that I've been working on. And I thought long and hard about it. Why is that we now feel like we're not testing as many new ideas as we had been doing previously? And I think part of it relates to this structure of mission teams with OKRs and objectives, which is really popular. But it leads to a phenomenon like this, right? So you give a team a goal, that's the blue line, and then they start iterating towards it. They'll try a number of different things, and if they're a strong team, they'll get closer and closer to their goal, and they'll keep pushing further and further on their metric. But if you're also interested in trying some out there ideas, you'll find they never do this, because they're always going to be taking iterative small bets that seem like they're the most likely to get them towards the goal that you set them. So how do you ever get to those ideas that are the 10x rather than the 10%? If you're a business that keeps growing, you're going to want to be testing really big new things, but no team is incentivized to take that on. Some companies try and solve this problem by creating an innovation team. I think that's really toxic because it implies that the rest of the company doesn't get to work on innovation. What we've been trying to do instead is to spin up small bets teams. So what this means is that any team can come and try and form a very small team and prove out a hypothesis. To give an example, one of our product managers came to me and said, look, we pay a third party to help with our fraud prevention at the moment, but I believe that if we were working on it in-house, we could have much better outcomes. Working with just one data scientist and developer in a couple of months, they were able to achieve a model that reduced fraud and reduced the number of false positives, so good customers getting caught up in our fraud protection nets, way beyond what the third party were doing. And so then there was a clear case for taking that into production and rolling it back up into one of the major teams. We've also had successes on this for teams working on chatbots or totally new products, one of which I'm hoping to launch later this week. So we found that it's a really effective way to not bet the farm on an idea, but enable small teams to spin up and test out new ideas before being incorporated back into the main group of teams. So here is the team, or at least half the team. This was our Christmas lunch taken halfway down the table. As you can see, everyone's got grins on their faces, and I think that's because, like, just right now we're in the right pot. Things feel pretty comfortable. However, I'm sure that it's only a matter of time, perhaps merely a few months away, before we need to repot again and think about a different way to structure our team and our processes to support the product. So that's what I'll leave you with today. I hope this has been useful. I'm Alice Newton Rex on Twitter. Do follow me because I'm trying to get more followers than my husband, and he's like 200 ahead at the moment. So thank you very much.